All right, so today we're going back in time a bit.
Ooh, time travel.
Yeah, in a way, right. We're going to be looking at OS2's workplace shell.
Ah, yes, the WPS.
Exactly.
One of the truly innovative graphical user interfaces.
It really was. And, this was back in the early 90s when GUIs were still kind of finding their footing.
Yeah, the days of Windows 3.1,
Oh, yeah.
really basics.
Compared to WPS Windows 3.1. Yeah, it looks like a drawing a kid made.
Yeah, very primitive.
So I think for today, our mission is to really figure out, why this WPS was such a big deal.
Yeah, what made it so special?
Yeah, and then also, get under the hood a bit.
Yeah, the nuts and bolts. Like, how did it work?
What was the tech behind it?
The magic behind the curtain.
Exactly.
And, be prepared to be surprised by some of this.
Oh, yeah?
You might find yourself wondering, why didn't this become like the main OS everyone used?
Seriously. I've been looking at some of the source material
Oh, yeah?
and some of the features. I'm like, how did they even think of this back then?
It was ahead of its time.
Way ahead of its time.
Really?
It's like they predicted the future of what we use now.
Let's start with something that seems simple now, but back then was revolutionary. Customizing your desktop.
Oh, yeah.
Today we can change our wallpaper arrange icons.
Yeah, you can make your OS look however you want.
Exactly, but back in the early 90s, you were stuck with whatever the OS gave you.
Yeah, you couldn't really change much.
But WPS was different. You could literally change your whole digital world.
It wasn't just like moving an icon around this was serious customization.
Yes, WPS was all about an extensible desktop.
Okay, so what does that mean? Like, what kind of crazy customizations are we talking?
Well, imagine you want your mouse pointer to look like a tiny spaceship.
Okay.
You could do that.
Wait, really?
Yeah, or custom Windows styles.
Oh, wow.
Like with animations and unique behaviors, WPS had the tools for it.
So you could make it look totally different than, the standard boring Windows.
Yes, and even manipulate graphics directly.
So you could, draw your own icons.
Yes. Custom icons, buttons, anything you could imagine.
Hold on, I'm looking at this book by Ray Duncan.
Oh, yeah, the one on advanced OS2 programming?
Yeah, and he talks about using these DOS DV-octal functions to change the mouse pointer.
Right.
That sounds pretty technical.
It was.
Could regular people even do this?
Well, it helped if you were comfortable with the tech side of things.
I see.
But that was the beauty of WPS.
Yeah.
It appealed to both casual users and hardcore programmers.
So like a dual personality.
Yes, easy to use on the surface, but powerful underneath.
Okay, that makes sense. And I guess that flexibility came from its architecture, right?
Yes, WPS went beyond just windows and icons.
Yeah.
It used object-oriented programming concepts.
Okay, now that sounds a bit techy.
It was a revolutionary approach at the time.
So can you break that down a bit? What does that even mean, in WPS?
Think of it like building with Legos.
Oh, I like Legos.
Each brick is an object with its own shape and function, and you combine them to create complex structures.
Right.
That's what object-oriented programming did for WPS.
The whole interface was built from these little Lego blocks, basically.
Exactly. Reusable, customizable building blocks.
So it wasn't like a rigid, predefined desktop.
Yeah.
More like, here's your digital Legos, go wild.
Yes. Build what you want.
That's really cool. And I guess that's what made it so adaptable.
Exactly. IBM could add features, update the interface, even support new hardware without having to rewrite the whole OS.
Wow. And users could customize it forever, basically.
Yes.
It's like a very early version of the app-driven interfaces we use now.
Very much so.
WPS was really ahead of its time.
Oh, absolutely. And we'll talk more about that after a quick break. So, we've been talking about how WPS was ahead of its time.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to see how these features actually benefited users.
Right. It wasn't just about being cool and techy.
Exactly. It was about making people more productive, more creative.
More in control of their computers.
Yes, and I think a great example of that is the whole concept of customization.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about aesthetics.
Right.
It was about letting people tailor their workspaces.
So they could work the way they wanted to.
Exactly. Instead of being stuck with a one-size-fits-all desktop.
You could rearrange things. Make custom shortcuts.
Yes. Make the OS an extension of your own thought process.
So it was like having a perfectly organized desk.
But in the digital world...
Everything just where you need it.
Precisely. And that had a huge impact on productivity.
Because you're not wasting time searching for things.
Right. And it goes beyond just organization.
Okay, how so?
WPS let people automate tasks, streamline their workflow.
So they could work smarter, not harder.
Yes, exactly. Give me an example.
Okay, sure.
Remember that scripting language we talked about?
Rex.
Rex.
Yes, Rex.
It sounded powerful, but I'm still not sure how people used it.
Well, with Rex, users could write scripts to automate all sorts of things.
Yeah.
Like, imagine you had to open multiple applications, copy data between them, then save it in a specific format.
Yeah, that sounds tedious.
With Rex, you could write a script to do all of that with one click. Oh, wow. So you wouldn't have to do it manually every time.
Exactly. And that's just one example.
People were using it to create custom menus and stuff too, right?
Yes, they were building specialized tools, even controlling external hardware.
That's amazing. It sounds like WPS was more than just an OS,
It was a platform for empowering users.
giving them the tools to really take control of their technology.
And that empowerment extended to the way people worked.
Yeah, because of the multitasking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
OS2 and WPS were built for multitasking from the ground up.
We talked about threading before.
Yes.
It was a really advanced way to let people run multiple programs at once.
Without things slowing down.
Right, no more waiting for one task to finish before starting another.
You could have a spreadsheet running while writing a document and browsing the web.
All at the same time.
Seamless multitasking.
It's hard to imagine going back to the days before that.
It was a real game changer for anyone who needed to juggle multiple tasks.
But you know, as amazing as all this was, WPS didn't become the most popular OS.
That's right. It's one of the most interesting parts of this story.
We've seen how groundbreaking it was.
But somewhere along the line, things changed.
So what happened?
Why didn't it become as big as Windows?
That's the million-dollar question.
And that's what we'll explore next.
Okay, so stay tuned to find out why this technological trailblazer ultimately faded from view.
It's a fascinating story, full of twists and turns.
Okay, so we've talked about all the amazing things about WPS.
Yeah,
But it never really took off.
right.
It didn't become like the Windows of its day.
It didn't.
Why not?
Why not? It's a good question.
Now, what happened?
Well, there are a few things.
Okay.
Timing was definitely a factor.
Okay, how so?
WPS came out right around the time Microsoft was starting to really push Windows.
Ah, so it was like a head-to-head competition.
Yeah, kind of like WPS was this incredible athlete showing up just as a new superstar was emerging.
And this was the early 90s, right?
Yeah, the PC market was still pretty new.
So nobody really knew which way it was going to go.
Exactly. It was like the Wild West of operating systems.
Anything could have happened.
Exactly. And Microsoft was really good at taking advantage of that.
Yeah,
They had this aggressive marketing campaign,
I remember those.
and they were building up this whole ecosystem of software developers.
So there were more programs available for Windows.
Exactly. And they made Windows seem like the safe choice.
I guess people were a little hesitant to try something new.
Yeah, I mean, you're asking people to change the way they use computers.
Right. It's a big deal.
So familiarity was important.
And I guess WPS needed a pretty powerful computer to run.
That's right. It was a resource hog compared to Windows.
And computers were expensive back then.
Oh, yeah. So Windows could run on cheaper machines.
That makes sense.
So for a lot of people, Windows just made more financial sense.
It's a shame, though, because WPS was so innovative.
It is. I think it also had this reputation for being complicated.
Really?
Yeah, even though it had all these user-friendly features, it was seen as more complex than Windows.
I guess it had so many options and customizations.
Exactly. It might have been overwhelming for new users.
Like giving someone a race car for their first driving lesson.
Exactly.
Too much too soon.
It was ahead of its time in that way, too.
So it was a victim of its own ambition.
Perhaps, but it was still a remarkable achievement.
It really was.
A true pioneer.
It showed what was possible.
And a lot of its ideas are still around today.
Yeah, like drag and drop and customizable desktops.
Even multitasking.
WPS did all that first.
It's a legacy that deserves to be remembered.
Absolutely. So what's the takeaway for our listeners today?
Well, I think it's a reminder that innovation doesn't always equal success.
Right.
Sometimes the best technology doesn't win.
There are other factors involved.
Yes, like timing and marketing and a bit of luck.
And I guess it also shows that sometimes the most important innovations are the ones that don't make it big. They still push the boundaries and inspire others.
WPS might not have become a household name.
But it left its mark.
And who knows, maybe some of its ideas will come back around.
That'd be cool.
Technology is always changing.
It's full of surprises.
So keep exploring, keep learning.
And never stop asking what if.
That's the spirit.
Well, that's all the time we have for today.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into OS2's workplace shell.
It was a fascinating journey.
Until next time, keep exploring the world of tech.